Good morning. Welcome to the webinar on grocery industry tax and alcohol issues. My name is Nathan Sanderson. I'm the Executive Director of the South Dakota Retailers Association. Just a little bit about the Retailers Association. We've got almost 4,000 members throughout the state of South Dakota. We're also one of the oldest and largest state retail associations in the country. In South Dakota, we represent retailers in the legislative and regulatory process. We provide information, offer training for food service and alcohol licensees, and provide member services including credit card processing, business insurance, data security, and a variety of others. As part of that service, the South Dakota Retailers Association also has an agreement with a labor law firm that allows our members to get answers to employment law questions from an attorney. Today's program, again on the grocery industry tax and alcohol issues, will feature presentations by Alex Farrell and Marnie Dooley of the South Dakota Department of Revenue. Alex is going to go first, and he's been an agent with the department for the last year. In addition to assisting taxpayers with questions when they call, his duties include working with tax discovery, compliance, licensing, collections, and reviews. Marnie is the revenue section coordinator who's been with the department for about 13 years. Marnie works within the Special Taxes Division and deals with alcohol, tobacco, and a number of other issues. A couple of quick notes before we start the presentation. On your screen, you'll note that there's a note-taking version of the presentation that can be printed from the handouts area. Also, the phones of all the attendees are muted so that we don't have any background noise. We'll have a question and answer period following the conclusion of each portion of the presentation. Again, Alex will go first. We'll do a brief Q&A after he's finished, and then we'll turn over to Marnie. If you would like to ask a question, take a look at the panel on the side of your screen. You may need to click the orange arrow to maximize that panel, and then you can just type the message in the chat box and click send. At the conclusion of each individual presentation, I'll read the questions that have been submitted out loud, and then Alex and Marnie will be available for the answers. Again, to ask a question, use the panel on the side of your screen, click on the orange arrow to maximize that. Now I'll turn it over to Alex Farrell.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. All right, so this is the sales tax for grocery stores. Just a couple of things to go over really before we get started. The information in this presentation does not cover every aspect of tax. It does not alter or supersede any state statute or administrative regulation. The information in this presentation does not carry regulatory or statutory authority, and all users of this presentation are responsible for keeping informed about changes in tax laws and regulations by reading the Department of Revenue newsletters, press releases, tax facts, and other documents published by the department. So first off, we have our sales tax. In South Dakota, the sales tax rate for the state is 4.5%, and it applies to the gross receipts for the sale, lease, or rental of tangible personal property. That's any item that you can pick up, hold, products transferred electronically, so any documents that you're sent that somebody prepared for you, those are all subject to sales tax. And services, anything like accounting, something where somebody's coming in, they're not giving you a physical product, but they're still doing work for you, that's also subject to sales tax. Construction services are not subject to sales tax. They are subject to the contractor's excise tax. If somebody's working on your building, that's a whole nother type of tax. If you have questions about that, you can certainly give the Department of Revenue a call. Then we have our city tax. It's up to 2%. Most of the cities in South Dakota have the 2% city tax. So generally speaking, 6.5% is the sales tax rate that you would be charging on anything that you're selling inside the state of South Dakota. Again, the city tax applies to all products and services subject to the state sales tax, and it applies when the product is used, stored, or consumed inside that city limit. So if it's delivered to the customer or picked up inside city limits, then the city tax would apply. There may be additional tax due if you purchased the product and picked it up, say, outside of city limits and brought it inside city limits. You may owe that additional tax as use tax, and we'll get into more of the use tax issues later on in the seminar. And then the special and fairly narrow one is the municipal gross receipts tax. It's an optional 1%, which some cities have enacted. It applies to the sale of alcoholic beverages, applies to eating establishments doing prepared food, also applies to lodging, and then the ticket sales or admissions to places of amusement, movie theaters, concerts, things like that. And we'll go through more of that later on in the presentation as well. Now, the gross receipts, this is what you put down on line 1 of your return. It includes all of your taxable and non-taxable sales, any special jurisdiction sales, that's sales onto any of the reservations in South Dakota. You'll actually add in the value of any barters in the event that you happen to barter for something. It does include delivery charges, so shipping, handling, anything like that. And it also includes reimbursable expenses, except for accountants and attorneys. Again, if you have questions about the reimbursable expenses, contact the Department of Revenue. It also includes your lottery receipts. So you'll put it on line 1 of the return. We'll go over lottery receipts later as how we take care of those on the return for the rest of the way. Discounts, coupons, things like that. When the manufacturer is going to reimburse you, you don't deduct it before you calculate the tax. So you charge the tax on the full price of the item. So in this example, we have cake mix for $2.25, frosting for $1.75. Assuming this grocery store is outside city limits, the tax rate would be 4.5%. And so we take the $2.25, the $1.75 for the frosting, add those together and calculate the tax due. In this case, it works out to the 18 cents. Then we subtract the value of the coupon. So we take off the 75 cents in this case for the manufacturer's discount, and the total due is $3.43. So anytime that you have to keep the coupon and make sure that you send it to the manufacturer so they pay you back, you're going to charge tax on the full price of the item because you're getting paid for the full price of the item. So sales tax is due on the full price of the item. Store coupons, where you're not reimbursed, that discount is not subject to sales tax. So you would go ahead and deduct the price of the coupon before you calculate the tax. So here we have an example, buy one, get one free. Half a gallon of ice cream is $5. The second one is also $5. We apply the 2-for-1 special, and we take $5 off of the total bill of the customer, and we calculate the tax on the $5 remaining, which in this case works out to 23 cents. You would report $5 on line 1 of your return, and then just keep for your records that you sold the 2 ice cream with this 2-for-1 special. Alrighty, use tax. This is where we get into a lot of the things that catch people by surprise. So the state and municipal use tax applies to any products and services used, stored, or consumed in South Dakota if sales tax was not paid on that item already. So you'd have the 4.5% state and city tax. It'd be the same rate as if the vendor had charged you sales tax. The big difference between sales tax and use tax, you pay sales tax to the vendor and they send the money to us. Use tax, the vendor didn't collect it, so you send the money directly to us instead. It's the same sales tax rate for the use tax. You would report it the month that you are invoiced, when you receive the product or service, or if you pull the item from your tax unpaid inventory. So if you buy 10 items for resale and you pull one of those items out of inventory to use it yourself, you would owe the use tax on your cost of that item, not necessarily what you would have charged the customer if you had sold it, but on what you paid for that item. That also includes any shipping and handling charges that would have applied to that item. If the product purchased is exempt from sales tax, there's a handful of items that are always exempt. Generally, they're things like insulin for human use. If you have questions about is this an exempt item or not, again, certainly call the Department of Revenue and we can help you out with that. But if it's exempt from sales tax, it would be exempt from use tax. You will only ever owe either the sales or the use tax on an item. You would not owe both. So if you paid sales tax when you bought it, you don't owe a use tax on it as long as you paid the highest rate of use tax that would be due. So if you paid 6.5% when you purchased it, there's nothing else due. We'll go over a couple of situations where it may arise. If you purchase an item from an out-of-state vendor, say you go up to Montana and you buy some shelving to use in your grocery store, when you bring that shelf into South Dakota, because Montana does not have a state sales tax, you would owe the use tax on that when you bring it into the state. Items taken from inventory for your own use. So if you have, let's say you have a couple of bottles of Windex on your shelf for resale, find that you've run out and you need to clean up something on a piece of glass, you pull that out of inventory, you owe the use tax on the value of that one bottle of Windex when you take it out of that inventory. And that's, again, on your cost, not the retail price that you would have charged to a customer. Items purchased over the internet, there were a lot of vendors making sales over the internet that did not have a sales tax license. If they don't charge you sales tax on whatever the item may be, you would owe the use tax on that item. The rental of equipment brought in from another state, if you wind up renting banners or something from a company, say in Montana, where they don't charge you sales tax, since you're using that equipment in South Dakota, it would be subject to that South Dakota use tax. Promotional items, things that are being given away, because you're giving them away, you would owe sales tax on the value that you paid for them, since you're not reselling them. And then purchases made in another state brought into South Dakota that either wasn't taxed or that was taxed at a lower rate. So if you're making a purchase in another state and they charge you, say, 3% as the sales tax on that item, when you bring it into South Dakota, assuming you're in city limits, you would owe an additional 3.5% to bring the tax paid on that item up to the 6.5% that's due. You don't owe another 6.5%, you just owe the difference so that the total tax paid on the item is 6.5%. And then supplies used in providing a service. So if you have a cleaning staff that comes in, cleaning company, when they're purchasing their cleaning products to use in your store, they would owe sales tax or use tax on that material as well. Some things that often get assessed use tax would be computers. Again, if you buy them out of state, don't pay sales tax on them, they'd be subject to use tax. Donations, because you're not reselling that item, it would be subject to use tax since you're the one who's using it to give away. So that's something that you really need to keep in mind. If you're donating items, you want to make sure that you're watching for the use tax on the value you paid for those items. Equipment leases, demonstration and sample items. So if you're giving away free samples, you would owe the use tax on the value of those free samples that you're giving away. Office supplies, tools, snow removal, services, promotional gifts, all of those things, if they're not charging you sales tax, then the use tax would be due. If your own employees are doing the snow removal, you don't owe use tax on your own employees' labor. But if you have another company come in, they should be charging you sales tax. If they don't, then you would have that use tax liability. Meals furnished to employees. If you have a restaurant, deli, anything in the grocery store, and you let employees have free meals, you would actually owe the use tax on the value of the food that they were given. That again kind of counts like those donations. You're giving the item away, so it's subject to use tax, and then equipment brought in from another state. So purchases from out-of-state vendors be charged the sales tax based on your address. If you pick it up, the sales tax rate's the same or more than in South Dakota, you wouldn't owe any additional sales tax. But again, if you paid less than the tax rate at your location, you would owe that difference. You do get credit for sales or use tax that's legally due and paid to another state if the other state provides for a like credit with South Dakota. You have items taken from inventory again. The use tax would be due when you take it out of the inventory. If you take it out of the inventory, you use it as a demonstration item, and you put it back, you would owe the use tax when you pull that out of inventory, and there's no deduction for the use tax when you pay the sales tax, or when the customer pays the sales tax to you at the end there. Alrighty, prepared food. This is one where I expect we're going to have a lot of questions. So Nathan, if we get a bunch of questions on what is and is not subject to this prepared food, municipal gross receipts, if you want to interrupt me with those questions, certainly feel free.
Okay.
So we have our prepared food. So this is kind of the hot and fresh versus the take and bake. If it's intended for immediate consumption, it's been prepared and ready to go, it would be subject to that municipal gross receipts tax. So did you heat the food or drink? Did you mix or combine 2 or more ingredients to make one product? And did you provide utensils? If you did any of those things and the food is set for immediate consumption, the municipal gross receipts tax, that additional 1%, so instead of having that 6.5% sales tax, these items are subject to 7.5% if you're inside the city limits of a city that charges the municipal gross receipts tax. So some food that's subject to it would be anything that's heated by the grocery store deli, food that was made by the grocery store, and things with utensils. Food not subject to the gross receipts tax, pre-packaged by the manufacturer. If you are just selling a pre-made sandwich, it's not subject to gross receipts tax. If you just slice meat or whatever other product and you're repackaging it, it's not subject to the gross receipts tax. And then food that requires further preparation by the purchaser, such as heating or combining with other things, is not subject to municipal gross receipts tax. Then we get into catering. So if your grocery store does catering, you'd have that municipal gross receipts tax on the full receipt there. Cake is kind of an odd product. Cake that's delivered to a customer is catering. It's subject to the municipal gross receipts tax. But if it's picked up at the store, it's subject only to the state and city tax. It's not subject to municipal gross receipts tax. So the full cake, a full pie or a full loaf of bread, not subject to municipal gross receipts tax. If you deliver it for catering, it is. And if you sell it by the slice, it is subject to the municipal gross receipts tax. So that's kind of an odd family of products there. If you have questions, we'll go through those, and then you can always give us a call again at the Department of Revenue, see if municipal gross receipts tax applies to whatever product it is you're questioning. Our containers, you can purchase containers exempt from sales tax if you furnish them free of charge, and it holds products that were sold to the customer. Containers that you reuse cannot be purchased for resale. So things that are containers would be boxes, bags, food wrappers, cups. Things that aren't containers would be your napkins, straws, utensils, reusable plates, trays, or baskets. Those things there in the yellow box are all subject to sales tax or use tax when you purchase or use them. All right, so we'll give you a couple of minutes there to get some questions through on gross receipts, and then we'll move on to the sales tax exemptions.
Alex, we've got a couple of questions related to the topic you just covered.
Okay.
First question related to municipal gross receipts taxes. Are hot beverages, such as coffee or hot chocolate, subject to municipal gross receipts tax?
They are. That is both food and drink. So a fountain pop is subject to municipal gross receipts tax. Say a 20-ounce bottle is not, because that's prepackaged by the manufacturer. Same for hot coffee, hot chocolate. Those are intended for immediate consumption, subject to the gross receipts tax.
Okay, very good. Now a question related to food. So if I sell a prepackaged cold deli sandwich, and somebody or a customer asks me to heat it up, is that subject to the municipal gross receipts tax?
That's going to be depending on who puts it in the microwave.
Okay, so
if you have
if the customer puts it in the microwave, then it's not, but if the owner does, then it is?
Exactly. If you have a microwave for the customer to use that's just out and available, whether they heat it up or not, you sold it to them cold.
Sure.
If you put it in the microwave and sell it to them hot, now it's prepared food subject to that gross receipts tax.
Okay, very good. I think those are the questions that we've got on this portion for now, and if there are any others, we can maybe catch them at the end.
Yep, we'll certainly catch them again at the end with the question and answers section there. So we'll go on to the sales tax exemptions. Exemption certificates are used to claim an exemption for products or services that are intended to be resold. So when the grocery store is purchasing the vast majority of the products that they buy, they intend to resell them to customers. So you owe the sales tax when the customer buys the product, not when you get it from your vendor. If it's used for an exempt purchase, there's a handful of those probably aren't going to wind up applying to grocery stores. But if you have, say, a bunch of fertilizer, 500 pounds or more, and a farmer wants to buy 500 pounds from you, they can purchase that exempt as part of the agriculture exemption. It's probably not something that's going to come up for grocery stores very often. And then you have purchases by an exempt entity. Exempt entities would be things like the federal, state, local government, public schools, things that are part of the government and have an exempt license. Tribal entities, those are all exempt. If you don't get an exemption certificate, charge them the sales tax. You need to keep it in your records for at least 3 years. That's our audit window. So in the event that you are selected for an audit, you want to make sure all of your records go back for that full audit window so you can provide all of the documentation the auditor is going to ask for. They don't expire unless the information changes, but we certainly recommend getting them updated annually just to make sure the information remains the same and that you haven't accidentally thrown one out that you're still going to need. And then if the purchaser is from out of state and that state doesn't issue sales tax permits, you can accept their federal employer ID number, driver's license number, or a state issued ID number from that customer. And then you would just have to document on that invoice, receipt, sale, that this was from an out-of-state customer making this purchase for an exempt resale use, and their state doesn't issue those permits. Any business that comes to you and says, yep, I want to buy this product exempt, and they give you a license number that ends in UT or ET, they cannot buy products for resale, so you cannot accept those exemption certificates. UT is a use tax license that's generally given to a business that doesn't make retail sales subject to sales tax, but may have taxable purchases. You see that a lot in doctors' offices, dentists, things where their product isn't subject to sales tax because it's healthcare, but their products, they are not exempt from sales tax when they make their purchases. Some exempt entities, again, governments, federal, state, local, public schools, municipal or volunteer fire ambulance departments, tribal governments, non-profit hospitals, and in some religious educational institutions, non-profit accredited private educational institutions, non-profit charitable relief agencies that are recognized by the federal government and by the South Dakota Department of Revenue. Those entities there with the stars that you see, they must be registered with us to have that exempt status. So if they don't have a license, but they tell you they're a school, that's not a public school, just a private educational school, if they're not registered with us, you would have to charge them the sales tax until they get registered with us and can properly fill out that exemption certificate for you. Churches are not exempt. That comes up quite often. Everybody thinks that churches are exempt from taxes. They're exempt from the federal income taxes. They are not exempt from sales tax. So if they're coming to you and say, yep, we're the church and we'd like to purchase whatever it happens to be, you're going to have to charge them sales tax. Most of the churches in South Dakota are aware of this. Every now and again, they'll get new staff who aren't aware. You can certainly send the person who says, I'm with the church and we're exempt, have them call us and we'll explain it to them. Send them to some of the documents that show that churches are subject to sales tax, rather than you having to stand there and tell them, no, you're not, and I'm not going to take that exemption certificate. You can let us do that. The SNAP exemption, so this would be the food stamps, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Food that's purchased with SNAP funds is exempt from the state sales tax. So those SNAP vouchers and debit cards that are accepted like cash at most stores, the rules on those, they can only buy food or plants and seeds to grow food for home consumption. If you have a discount coupon that's used in addition to SNAP funds, manufacturers' coupons are still subject to sales tax. So we'll sneak through to the example there with the manufacturer's coupon. So a food stamp recipient purchases $11 worth of food. They have a $1 manufacturer's discount coupon, and they have $10 in food stamps. The sales tax is charged on that $1 worth of the manufacturer's coupon. So the recipient would pay $10.07, since the 6.5% sales tax would apply to the $1 coupon. The $10 food stamps is exempt. So that's one of those weird things to watch for with the food stamps. If somebody's giving you a manufacturer's coupon and the total works out with the coupon and the food stamps, you have to make sure you charge tax on the manufacturer's coupon. There may be additional amounts due for you. The store coupons, where you're just giving them a discount, you wouldn't owe any additional tax on that since you're not being reimbursed. Then we have our special jurisdictions. These are the tribal reservations. We have tribes that have collection agreements with the state. There are tribes that do not have collection agreements with the state. And then there are a few tribes that have limited agreements with us. And then we'll go over the reporting for the special jurisdictions. So there are 5 Indian tribes that have collection agreements with us. It includes sales, use, tourism, contractors, excise tax. So the Cheyenne River, Standing Rock, Crow Creek, Oglala, and Rosebud tribes all have the full agreements with us. All businesses making sales or providing construction services subject to the same taxes, tax rates, and exemptions. The tribes with limited tax agreements, so the contractors, excise tax, and use tax, is the Yankton Sioux and the Sisseton Wahpeton. Those, if you're making sales there, it's always a good idea to contact us or contact the local tribal Department of Revenue so that you can figure out exactly what's due on any sales that you happen to be making there. We have no agreements with the Flandreau and the Lower Brule tribes, so sales of products delivered into Indian country without a collection agreement are just subject to the 4.5% state sales tax. Sales by an enrolled tribal member on non-agreement Indian country that's controlled by that member's tribe are not subject to the state sales tax. Enrolled tribal member retailers are required to collect the 4.5% state use tax on sales made to non-members of the tribe, and they send those funds to the state. This is what you'll see on your return. So in the event that you're making sales into a reservation, all of your sales, again, go on line 1, that gross sales line of the return. In this example, there's a $500 non-taxable sale and $1,000 that was sold into one of those special jurisdictions. So the state taxable amount, we take our $6,500, subtract the $500 non-taxable, and we subtract the special jurisdiction sales. So there's $5,000 subject to the state sales tax. Then we have the Rosebud Sioux tribe. In this case, since that $1,000 special jurisdiction sale occurred within the limits of that reservation, that $1,000 sales is subject to the 4.5% tax, but that money gets sent back to the tribe instead of going to the state. From your point of view, you're going to send all of the money to us and we're going to distribute it. This section tells us who gets what money. So the city of Mission, apparently that was the city in the example where that $1,000 sale happened. City of Mission has a 2% city tax, and then the 4.5% Rosebud Sioux tribe tax, and then the $5,000 apparently is all in tier, subject to the 4.5% state and the 2% city tax. And then you just go through and add up all of those taxes and send it all through us, and we handle sending the money to the cities, the tribes, all of that, rather than have you file with every city that you do business with. We do have a tribal tax fact. It's available on our website. Sales off of Indian country are taxable. The state and city sales tax would apply if you're not on those special jurisdiction territories. And then the tribes may also impose taro or tekro taxes in addition to the sales tax. So again, if you're going to be doing business on those tribal jurisdictions, you want to contact us, contact the tribal Department of Revenue so that you can get specific details on what you're going to be looking at for taxes when you're making those sales, doing whatever work it is you're going to do there. All right, a couple of other miscellaneous things. We have medicine, so prescription drugs that are sold for human use is not subject to sales or use tax if the drugs are prescribed, dispensed, or administered by a physician, chiropractor, optometrist, dentist, podiatrist, or an audiologist. Insulin for use by humans is exempt from sales tax, whether it's sold with or without a prescription. And then over-the-counter drugs without a prescription are subject to the 4.5% state and applicable city tax. So if you have somebody who comes in and they're going to buy over-the-counter aspirin because their doctor told them to, and their doctor gave them the prescription, even though it's an available over-the-counter drug, because they have that prescription, it would become exempt from sales tax. Anything that they're purchasing because, you know, we want to have some Advil at home, that's subject to sales tax. So it's a little more complicated than just the things that the public can pick up and buy without needing to talk to the pharmacist are subject to sales tax. It's a little more complicated. If they have that prescription from the doctor, it would be exempt, and you'll just need to make sure you document that the same way you would document all of your prescription drug sales. Delivery charges, if you decide that you're going to be delivering products to your customers, the delivery charges, transportation, shipping, packaging, handling, all of those charges would be subject to the state and city tax when you deliver it to a customer. The sales tax would then be based on the customer's address. So if you, the grocery store, are in city limits and you make a delivery to a customer who is outside the city limits, because you delivered it to them outside city limits, you would only charge them the 4.5% sales tax. If they come in and pick it up at your store, they picked it up inside city limits and it's subject to that 6.5% sales tax. And then your delivery fee is going to be subject to whatever tax applies to the products that you're selling. If the product isn't taxable, so say you're delivering prescription drugs, the delivery fee that you charge would then not be subject to tax because the prescription drugs are not subject to sales tax. Donations to individuals are going to be subject to sales tax or use tax. So again, if you're taking it out of inventory to donate to somebody, it's going to be subject to that use tax. If you donate it to an exempt entity, it's not subject to sales tax or use tax, but you do need to make sure you get an exemption certificate to document that it was given to an exempt entity. So if you donate it directly to the school will be able to give you an exemption certificate. You wouldn't owe the use tax on that. If the PTA takes that donation, the PTA is not the school, they are subject to sales tax. You would owe the use tax on whatever that donation is. Advertising, if you hire an advertising agency and they do both, prepare and place the advertisement, it's exempt from sales tax. If they make an advertisement and they give it to you, it'd be subject to sales tax. So if Ad Agency Incorporated creates a commercial for Greatest Groceries, and Ad Agency provides the commercial to the local broadcast station, that would be exempt because they both made and placed in the media that advertisement. So you wouldn't owe sales tax, you wouldn't owe use tax on that transaction. If they make the commercial, they give it to you and you take it to the media, you put it on your website, do whatever else you want to do with it, it would be subject to sales tax since the advertising agency did not do both. So that's something to kind of watch out for, is what's that advertising agency doing for you and who are they giving it to, because that'll change whether their service is subject to sales tax or use tax. Brochures, flyers, and other printed materials, again, subject to the state and city sales tax if it applies. Lottery receipts, again, they're included in gross receipts, so line 1 of your return, you put all of the money that you received for those lottery sales included in there, and then you deduct it as non-taxable. It goes down on line 3. You don't owe sales tax on the lottery sales, and you don't charge sales tax to the customer, but you still report it through your return. Alrighty, I think that concludes the sales tax portion. Nathan, do we have any other questions about sales tax that have come up yet?
Yes, Alex, a couple of different areas. And so to go back to the beginning, on municipal gross receipts tax.
Sure.
So the question is, does a city have to charge municipal gross receipts tax on all of the items that were listed? Alcohol, prepared food, lodging, ticket sales, that kind of thing. Or
no.
Can a city charge that tax on just 1 or 2 or 3 of the items? for the categories?
Yep. When the city implements the municipal gross receipts tax, they can choose any of those categories. If they select that category, then the tax applies to anything in that category. So they may decide that they want to only charge municipal gross receipts tax on alcohol. In that case, all of your alcohol sales would be subject to municipal gross receipts, but your prepared food would not be. So they can pick and choose. We do have a publication on our website. It's the Municipal Tax Information Bulletin. It gets updated twice a year. And in there, you can find all of the cities that have city sales tax. And then next to that, there's the municipal gross receipts. And it will tell you item by item for those categories, whether that city has municipal gross receipts tax that applies to that category.
Okay, very good. Now, you used alcohol as an example, and so we've got a question about that as well. The question related to alcohol is, can a grocery store who's a retailer offer free samples of alcohol?
Okay, that's actually more of a question for Marnie. I know we get into some restrictions on the alcohol and samples and things like that. So Marnie, are you available?
I am.
Well, I'd say, Marnie, why don't we cover that as we go through your portion?
Okay.
Does that work?
That works.
Okay, we've got at least one other question for Alex.
Yep.
The question is related to inventory.
Mm-hmm.
So if I take an item out of inventory, my inventory, and donate it to a tax-exempt group, do I still owe use tax on that?
No, you're going to get an exemption certificate from them, and it's just like if you had sold the item to them. You just happen to be selling it to them for no price. So you'll get that exemption certificate, document that it was a donation, so you'd still want to ring it through your register and zero it out so that you have a receipt to go with it, and maybe make some notes on it that say, donated to this exempt entity, and you do not owe use tax on that item.
Okay, very good. I think this is the last question for you, Alex, and it's related to some of the prepared food products that we had talked about before.
Okay.
If a customer asks a grocer to grind meat for them, like say ham, for instance, but no other ingredients are added, does municipal gross receipts tax apply?
No, if you're just going to go ahead and grind that meat, then it's not ready to be immediately consumed. So if you're grinding hamburger, you're not selling it with the intention that somebody's going to sit there and eat the raw hamburger right there on the spot. You're just going to grind up the meat for them. They're going to take it home. They're going to finish cooking it, mixing it with whatever else they're going to do. If you're just going to go ahead and grind that meat and repackage it for them, it's not subject to that prepared food municipal gross receipts tax.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll wrap up this portion and we'll move on to Marnie. I just remind everyone that if you have a question, the chat box is there and available, and Alex will be available at the end of the presentation as well to clean up any additional questions that we might not cover. But with that, I'll turn it over to Marnie.
All right.
Hi, my name is Marnie Dooley, and I am in the Special Tax Division, and I am going to talk about some alcohol inquiries. And one moment, my question is, can you all see my screen?
Yep, looks like I have you up.
All right, thank you. All right, so moving on with alcohol inquiries. The first thing we're going to talk about is stocking shelves. Store employees can be 18 to stock shelves. Manufacturers and wholesalers are prohibited from stocking shelves, and that's also kind of falls into a little bit of the inducement, and that is under admin rule 64750414. So if you have any more questions, I suggest reading the rule, then coming and calling us. Talking about pricing. Now, the pricing of alcohol can't be sold below the wholesale cost, and that is what you buy from the wholesaler or the wholesale licensee, and that is based off of South Dakota Codified Law 35-4-129. And then that is also, you can't do like buy one, get one free. It's an inducement to buy, but you can do it at a discount as long as they're still paying at least the price that you paid for it. And that, again, is under Admin Rule 64750414. All right, and so the hours of operation, we've gotten a lot of questions about this because the legislation has changed last year. As of July 1st, you can operate 7 days a week, 365 days a year from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. However, unless your local government makes an ordinance to restrict the hours or the days of sale, such as they may say you can only sell on Sundays from 11 to 10, or that they may say you have to take Christmas off. That is up to the local governing body. The state says, yes, you may sell 7 days a week, 365. The age of the clerk or the beggar, this is also a lot of questions we've been having, and this has changed just a little bit too. Sorry, one moment, let me go back here. Okay, so the age of the clerk and the beggar, going off of South Dakota Codified Law 35-4-79 and 35-4-79.4 talks about whether you are 50% of gross sales of alcohol or of gross sales is not from alcohol, or if it is. I suggest you as a retailer figure out what your gross sales is and go to that statute to see that you either fall under one or the other. No one under the age of 18 may sell or serve alcohol. And we also have the definition of serving alcohol as pouring a tap, which I understand that grocery stores are not pouring a tap, but serving alcohol and ringing up the sale of alcohol. Nobody under the age of 18 may ring up the sale. It has to be someone 18 or older, and there still has to be someone who is 21 on the premises to be able for that 18-year-old to do that. The delivery of alcohol, we've had a few questions of this as well. And with the delivery of the alcohol, you have to have a package liquor license in order to be able to deliver alcohol, which is the off-sale liquor license. And then you have to have the off-sale delivery license, which is $150. It does need to be purchased at your location, delivered later, and then an employee must deliver it, must be 21, and the person receiving the alcohol must be 21, and they must show the person delivering alcohol proof of age. And that is under South Dakota Codified Law 35-4-127. And then purchasing alcohol is under South Dakota Codified Law 35-4-30. Retailers are permitted to purchase, retailers must purchase from wholesalers only. We are having problems with retailers going to big box stores, and we consider big box stores such as Walmart, Walmart, local grocery stores, Sam's Club, and Costco. They do sell stuff at wholesale, but they are not a wholesaler. The wholesaler for alcohol is a $5,000 license, and those are the only ones who are allowed to buy. So you can't have your local bar run to the grocery store to pick up alcohol for wholesale from you. They have to buy it from a wholesaler. And then one last question I was going to go to, I'm going to talk about the sampling. And sampling is South Dakota Codified Law 35-4-10.2. And that talks about, I'm actually going to close my screen and I'm going to read it directly from Legislative Research Council, from the legislature. And it says, off-sale licensees are permitted to provide free samples, no additional license required. They must have a packaged liquor license, and they provide samples of malt beverage, wine, distilled spirits, liqueurs, or cordials in the general public without obtaining an additional license. And the licensees can offer samples such as malt beverage, wine, distilled spirits, liqueurs, and cordials, and these licensees currently have in stock and is offering for sale to the general public. You guys can read the rest. You are able to offer samples. If you have more questions about it, please give me a call. And here's my information. My number is 605-773-5424. And that's my direct line. And you can call me and ask me about it. And I will also give you some administrative rules that we do have with sampling that follow with what you can offer and what you cannot offer. So are there any other questions?
Thanks, Marnie. This is Nathan again.
Okay.
Marnie referenced a number of administrative rules and South Dakota codified laws. Those are available online at sdlegislature.gov. She went to that website there to pull up South Dakota codified law, but you can also get the administrative rules there as well, sdlegislature.gov. So we do have a couple of additional questions, Marnie, here's kind of a multifaceted question.
Okay.
So discounts are allowed on alcohol, but no inducements are allowed to purchase alcohol, as
Correct.
we understand it. So the question is it legal to advertise that if a customer buys X amount of groceries, then they can get a discount on an alcohol purchase? Or vice versa, if you buy X amount of whiskey, for instance, you can get a discount on a grocery store or a food purchase.
Okay. Okay. So buying X amount of groceries, getting a discount on alcohol is actually an inducement. However, buying some alcohol and getting a free bag of chips, you can say chips, but you cannot say a brand label. It cannot be a brand label. It has to be generic bag, and you have to offer to any bag of chips. Okay. Or any company is what we have right now.
Okay, so you can advertise that if a customer buys $100 worth of beer, they can get, a free bag of chips or something, but they can't get
and
a free
usually
bag
there usually is a coupon code. I would rather talk individually on that one because I don't want to say a general, because sometimes there's certain stipulations with it. Usually those do come from the manufacturers, those coupons, not from the general store. So it can't be a local store that wants to do it. It's usually the manufacturer that is having some type of coupon or mail-in rebate, and that's a whole new presentation. So call us on that, and we'll talk to you individually about each stipulation and stuff, because it does need to be advertised, and if there's price downs and stuff like that from the wholesalers, then we have to actually okay that. So
okay.
So
all right,
that's a whole new set of rules. So yeah.
Sure. So let's talk a little bit about stocking alcohol on shelves. Can you briefly go over the age piece again, and then specifically, can the wholesaler, the distributor, stock beer, for instance, on the shelves for a grocer?
No. Okay, so the age is 18 and the wholesaler cannot. They can organize it if they're setting up a display, but they cannot come in and stock the shelves. That has to be the retailer that is doing that. That is an inducement with the wholesaler to do that. So the employees of the grocery store or the retailer need to be stocking the shelves. The wholesaler can come in and they can, like, the salesman can straighten the shelves if they want to do it, if they want to straighten some of their product out on the shelves, but they cannot stock it.
Okay. An additional question we've got here is, talk about the alcohol delivery again in conjunction with a grocery purchase. And so if I, for instance, buy $150 worth of alcohol, is a grocer able to deliver that if there is food delivered at the same time?
Yes.
Are there dollar thresholds? Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so you have to buy at least $150 worth of alcohol in order for it to get delivered. A lot of times we look at this as if a grocery store or retailer is catering and they're delivering the cake and the food and the alcohol later, then they can bring it in their vehicle and deliver it and get it all set up. But at a different location, like if it's at a venue or even somebody's house, but there has to be somebody there 21 or older to accept the alcohol.
So if
there is, go ahead.
Go ahead.
There is no, as far as I know, there is no, you have to buy a certain amount of food. There was previous, now it's just the $150 worth of alcohol does need to be purchased.
So just to be clear, if I go to my local grocery store and I buy $5,000 worth of groceries and one bottle of whiskey for $30, that would not be
No,
able to be delivered to my house.
correct. Correct. The groceries can be delivered, but the alcohol cannot because it's not $150 worth. And that local grocery store needs to have a package delivery license that does get accepted at the local level, which
Okay.
is the city, because cities are only allowed to have counties are not allowed to have package delivery or packaged liquor licenses. Only retailers in the city. That's in the statute, and so therefore only cities are allowed to issue the package delivery
Okay.
license as well.
All right. Well, thank you, Marnie. Thank you, Alex. Alex, we didn't have any additional questions come in on the sales tax piece. Just a note for everyone, we've recorded this webinar, and a link to the recording will be emailed by tomorrow to anyone who has registered for the program. The Retailers Association has several additional webinars coming up, presentations on the ballot issues, for instance, that you'll be voting on in the general election. And for more information on the various webinars that we have available, visit sdra.org. That's www.sdra.org. Thank you to everyone for participating in today's program. Again, if you have additional questions, you can contact Alex or Marnie at the Department of Revenue directly, and have a great day.